Yes! You know, I speak for everybody when I say that life could be so much better if certain things were easier or if certain things didn't exist at all. And this is even more applicable when we ourselves do things that make our lives even more difficult. If there's any particular aspects in your life that you want to change, but you aren't sure how to go about making those changes, to simply, air quotes, do it is usually what other people would advise, but it's hardly ever that easy. Sometimes you gotta force yourself to get into the groove of things for changes to take effect. To be as literal as possible, the only way to get rid of your bad habits is to replace them with good habits. But once again, you gotta figure out a method that works for you, because what works for somebody else may not work for you at all. But I'll be able to help you with that, because in today's lesson, we're gonna go over 5 of the most important life changes you need to make today. Let's go. Number 1. Plan your moves in silence and or live your life as privately as possible. Now, I wouldn't say that any tips on this list are more imperative than others, but out of all of them, this is the one that I adhere to the most. Now, living a private life has many benefits, but keeping the general public out of your personal business is what matters the most. Remember, people's opinions of you should never and will never matter, but I would never suggest adding fuel to the fire by publicizing information and the rest of the world does not need to know about. I only feel comfortable letting people know certain aspects and details of my life, but not everything, because they don't need to know everything. I've been on this planet a while, and I've definitely seen a lot, but the people who feel the need to broadcast their entire lives on social media will never cease to amaze me. I just got a new job. Let's post it on Facebook. I just broke up with my girlfriend because she gave me an STD. Let's post that on Facebook too. I never understand the thought process of people like this. Are they looking for validation, attention, or do they just enjoy being a laughingstock? I wouldn't be able to tell you, but when I log into my socials and I see stuff like this, it's always the same people. And sometimes it's more entertaining to watch people argue back and forth on Facebook or Twitter than watching one of my favorite TV shows. And you want to know what's even funnier? If you ask these people about the details they posting online, some of them even have the nerve to get mad at you. Like, what? How does that make sense? You use the internet as your online public diary, but I'm the one being nosy? That's definitely not how this works. Listen, if you're guilty of this, please stop. You're watching this video to learn how to become a better person, so if that's not a goal of yours, I have no other advice for you. And if that's the case, continue posting your life online so people can continue laughing at you and clowning you. That's your problem, not mine. But anyways, living a private life is something that always came natural to me. Now, I'm a reclusive introvert, so I've always been more laid back, quiet, and to myself. And when I say that I only disclose small details in my life, I mean exactly that. But I want to make it evident that things aren't to the extent where I take the private life to such an extreme, to the point where certain aspects of my life are covert ops, top secret, confidential. And I'm not suggesting that at all, because there's a difference between being private and secretive. Privacy is the opposite of public, and that's it. But when you live a secretive life, everything about you is a mystery. And I don't know who else can relate to this, but I can't trust or refer to somebody as a friend or homie if I know absolutely nothing about them. People that live like this might have legitimate reasoning as to why they operate that way, but if I don't know a single thing about you, I'll never refer to you as anything more than an associate or an acquaintance. So yeah, never get the words private and secretive mixed up, because they aren't meant to be used interchangeably. I want to make it clear that it's perfectly fine to share your accomplishments, life events, and other cool aspects of your life with your friends, family, and the general public, but you gotta know where to draw the line. I don't think there'll ever be an issue with posting pictures of the birth of your child, your wedding, your trip to Vegas, or something along those lines, because that's what social media is intended for. And these are examples that people look forward to seeing when they log into the socials. Nobody cares or wants to know about your baby daddy and how he isn't paying child support, who got cheated on, or whatever. Funny story, I can recall multiple different instances where women have posted child support paperwork online, and I'm not for sure if it was to humiliate the father of their kids or herself, but she definitely knocked out 2 birds with 1 stone. Keep all of that to yourself, because it's not beneficial for the world to know this. Seriously. Number 2, not following your first mind. You ever been in a situation where you did something or didn't do something and regretted it later because your gut originally told you what you should have done? Of course you have, because we all been there. As a matter of fact, this happened to me so often. I've reached a point in my life where I've convinced myself that my conscience is a real human being, because literally every time I don't follow my first mind, I regret it. Seriously, every single time. It could be something as minute and ridiculous as, hey, don't park in that spot, or hey, buy this item because you will need it later. And as ridiculous as this all sounds, trust me when I say that my gut has been right every single time. I remember one time when I walked into a Goodwill and I found a factory sealed case of jewel cases for storing loose CDs. If I recall correctly, they were like $6 for a pack of $1.50 if I'm not mistaken. And that was a pretty good price, but despite how cheap they were, I didn't see what benefit they would bring me. I didn't own any loose CDs, so I passed on them. But just a few months later, I picked up reselling as a side gig and ended up with a bunch of loose video game discs. And guess what? That pack of 50 jewel cases I passed up would have really benefited me at that time, and I ended up with no way of storing them. But yeah, these are just some examples of minor things that happen. Some huge red flags you never want to ignore will be something like getting drunk on a work night, cheating on your diet, not filling up your gas tank before work, something like that. Now, I can't count on two hands how many times I decide to be lazy and go straight home after work with almost no gas in the tank, and I tell myself I'll do it later, knowing full well that I'm not leaving my house when I get home from a long day of working. So what ends up happening? I get in my car, I drive to work, and guess what? Now I gotta make a trip to the gas station when my original plan was to go straight to work. And every time this has happened, I have nobody else to blame it on but myself. Rule of thumb: if it sounds like it might be a bad idea, don't do it. Seriously. Preface every decision you make with this thought process, and you will save yourself the trouble of beating yourself up and drowning in the pool of regret. Just listen to Jiminy Cricket when he makes a suggestion. For real. Number 3, increase your standards and lower your expectations. I'm gonna be real with y'all, this one can be a bit depressing, but that doesn't take away from how much it'll benefit you. If you think highly of someone or something, you always expect the best results and or performance from them or it. For instance, if a parent has high expectations for their kid or their academic performance or something like that, the parents will always have the perception that their kid will perform well in school, and that kid will feel like it's the end of the world if their grade point average slips. And that's a lot of pressure for anybody, especially a kid. Having high standards is telling yourself that you're deserving of something great or the absolute best and not settling for anything less than that. This mindset is most commonly incorporated into people's love lives. For instance, if I find myself in and out of meaningless and or bad relationships, eventually I smarten up and realize that the women I was going after were no good for me. And increasing my standards would be a perfect defense mechanism to filter out any and everybody who won't serve me any purpose. Granted, when applied here, you gotta realize the difference between having high standards and unreasonable standards. If you're ridiculous enough to write down a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to a potential significant other, you'll probably end up alone and miserable for the rest of your life because you will never find somebody that'll check everything off that list. Don't ever try and apply a template to a human being because that's just plain stupid and unreasonable, because we as humans are entirely too unique and there's several billion of us on this planet. Telling yourself that you're deserving of the best is an act of having high standards, but not getting your hopes up is an example of having low expectations. Desire the best, but expect the worst. So if something really good happens, you'll feel safe to celebrate it. But if something really bad happens, you already saved yourself the trouble of getting your hopes up. This mindset was something I caught wind of early in my life, but around the time I first started working retail, I had mastered it. My manager at the time always told me to undersell and overdeliver because in a sales instance, if you lead by being polite and consoling, then provide the customer with more benefits than what they expected, you'll probably have that customer for life. If I went to the store to buy a computer, but ended up leaving with that plus a bunch of other things such as free and or discounted items that I would have needed later on down the line, I would be so overjoyed with the entire experience, it's likely that I would have became a forever customer of that store. Number 4, going out of your way for people who didn't earn it. Now, if you're a selfless and caring person, this definitely applies to you. I guarantee you. Growing up, I was a kind and giving type of child, and I always tried to look out for my friends and relatives to the best of my ability. I adhered to this mind state going into adulthood and eventually changed when I realized how factual the statement, "nice guys finish last" is. One of my most prominent shortcomings was my inability to tell people no, because I always felt that no was never an option for me. I developed a self-destructive tendency to go out of my way to do things for people and exhibit myself as a very reliable person without expecting the same thing in return, and ended up dealing with a bunch of people who would disappear from my life instead of reciprocating what I did for them. Now, a turning point in my life was when I was taking out the trash one day, and another tenant from my apartment complex sold me the sob story about not having food stamps for the month and was looking for somebody to take her to Little Caesars. Now, she didn't directly ask me though, and instead she insinuated that she needed help and expected me to take initiative. I'll be honest, she almost pulled a fast one on me because the old me would have drove to Little Caesars and paid for her food without expecting to be paid back. But instead, I politely informed her that I didn't plan on going to Little Caesars today and proceeded to walk outside and throw my garbage away. Now, if I didn't put my foot down right then and there, it's very likely that she would have expected that same kindness the next time I saw her, and I absolutely refused to travel down that road again. If I'm being honest, a lot of my altruism came from the belief that if I do enough good in my life, I'll be rewarded. And even though I still believe in karma, I no longer believe that it's my job to make everybody happy. And believe me, when I figured this out, my entire perception of life changed instantly. Simply put, if you're too polite, you'll get taken advantage of. Point blank, period. Setting personal boundaries is healthy for you and your personal growth, because there are times when people will only take you seriously when you put your foot down. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being kind and helping those less fortunate than you, but making it a habit will attract people who will take your kindness for weakness. Save all that selflessness for your close friends, relatives, and loved ones, and whoever else you have close relationships with. And at any point in time, you have a gut feeling of regret when it comes to helping somebody, that's your conscience telling you not to do it. A lot of the time, these people could help themselves. They're just too lazy to do it, or they have zero inclination to do it themselves, and or it's less work to have somebody else do it for them. And if you think about it, that makes perfect sense, because why do something for yourself when somebody else will do it for you? As messed up as that sounds, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just offering insight as to why people operate like this. If you make it evident that you don't help people who don't help themselves, they'll either try to manipulate somebody else or encounter an instance where they won't have anybody else to rely on but themselves. Believe it or not, that could be a turning point in their life and might motivate them to become more adept at helping themselves before they try to take advantage of or rely on other people. TLDR. Ain't nothing wrong with making people work for your trust, companionship, and reliability before you start sticking your neck out for them. You owe it to yourself. Make them earn it, and you will see who's really there for you and who isn't. Number 5. Stop procrastinating. Now check it out. Procrastination is something that everybody is guilty of, and to some extent, this one piggybacks off of not following your first mind. Now I know for a fact I'm not the first, and I won't be the last person to tell you to stop waiting until the last minute to do things. Everybody is guilty of this, so I won't be the dead horse, but seriously, if you establish a method or organization in your life that works for you, and specifically you will find out how much more initiative you have to get things done instead of putting them off. One of my worst habits is knowing that I have to do something and getting annoyed with myself later when I finally end up taking care of it. Now I can't really get mad at anybody but myself, because if I would have taken care of it when it was fresh in my mind, I wouldn't have found myself in an inconvenient predicament later. For example, I live in a 3-story apartment, and I'm one of the super incredibly lucky tenants who lives on the 3rd floor. And my motivation to go to my car and get something that I forgot or take out the trash is usually vanquished by the journey of 3 flights of stairs. So when I finally get home, I usually have zero motivation to leave again. You can call me lazy, and I wouldn't disagree with you, but living on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex comes with all types of challenges and inconveniences, moving furniture being probably the worst of them all. So yeah, whenever the words "I'll worry about it later" or "I don't feel like it" pop in your head, do your best to just do it now. Get it over with and save yourself the trouble of being mad at yourself later. All right, classmates, that does it for this one. Remember, bad habits are hard to break, but acknowledging your shortcomings and figuring out ways to become the best version of yourself are imperative parts of growing up. You will never be happy with yourself until you kick those bad habits to the curb and learn from your mistakes. But as long as you stay consistent, you will eventually come to realize how much easier your life can be. If you made it to the end of today's lesson and enjoyed what you learned, do me a favor and thumb rest to that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new on campus, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon, and you will never miss another lesson at the Elite Nation University again. But with that being stated, this concludes another lesson at the Elite Nation University. Class is dismissed. Y'all take it easy.
Yes!